I see. I see the TikTok Shives in the chat, and I know it's time to go. Hi, everybody. Welcome to the show. As always, I will be spending probably the first hour of the show. I'm going to try to keep the answers relatively short if I can, because I got a lot of patron and member questions this week, and I don't want to take up like the entire show answering those, although I love my patrons and my members. Thank you so much for giving me money and for asking me questions. But the first part of the show is going to be, dealing with those and answering those. And then during that portion of the show, I will not be paying like super close attention to the live chat. So if you have anything you want me to see in the live chat, please, if you can, hold off on that until I get through the patron and member questions. And then I will spend the remainder of the show just hanging out with the chat and talking about whatever. So, yeah, let's get started. Thank you all so much for being here. Hi, everybody. A couple of new people in the chat, and a lot of familiar faces. And let's begin with the patron and member questions, shall we? Here we go. And the first one is from MW Ridra, who says, "Hey, Steve, I assume that you'll already be getting a lot of questions about Trump surviving a typical U.S. school day. Yeah. So I won't waste my question on that. I have to say that I was feeling particularly distraught afterward, but then my adventures with Superman's cheesy hopefulness snapped me out of it. What is your go-to morale booster when things are looking grim?" That is a really good question. My go-to morale booster. Sometimes it's Star Trek, but probably it's more often like something like MacGyver or like a Godzilla movie, something like that. If I want to watch something that I know will put me in a good mood and I know will take my mind off my troubles, whatever they may be, MacGyver or a Godzilla movie, especially like a late 60s, early 70s Godzilla movie where he was in full goofy babyface mode. My go-to, as I've said many times, is Godzilla versus Megalon, which judged as a film is one of the worst ones, but just a movie to put on and watch and have fun with is fantastic. I mean, come on, Godzilla and Jet Jaguar forming a tag team against Megalon and Gigan. Like that final fight between the four of those, between Godzilla and Jet Jaguar and Megalon and Gigan, like that's one of my all-time favorite kaiju monster fights. I love it so much. So probably something like that would be what I would do to cheer me up if I'm down or if I'm fed up with the sorry state of the world. Larry Bliss, concerned citizen, the need for complete transparency regarding the cognitive and physical health of U.S. presidents and presidential candidates has never been more apparent. I think our country needs an independent fitness review board made up of the finest healthcare professionals to evaluate all presidents and presidential candidates who go above 10% in polls, as well as third-party candidates. The members of the board would be paid out of federal funds rather than any individual. Everyone would have to submit comprehensive physical and cognitive tests or risk losing federal campaign money. They would have to be recertified every election year. All results would be posted for all to see. How does this sound to you? Sounds great. It sounds terrific. I think it's a very good idea. But can we do it? I have. It sounds like a good idea. Isaiah Taylor, why Star Trek IV: The Voyage Home is my all-time favorite Star Trek movie. So, Steve, over the weekend, assassination notwithstanding, I watched all three of the Trek films commonly known as the Genesis trilogy: Wrath of Khan, The Search for Spock, and The Voyage Home. And I think, my opinion obviously, The Voyage Home is probably my favorite Trek movie. Let me explain. It's a complete different vibe and tone from the previous movies in that trilogy. It's playful and funny and full of energy. All the characters have very good chemistry in their respective groups, and I really enjoyed Kirk and Gillian's chemistry together. Their whole time together reminded me of a silly 80s teen love romance, a la an Anthony Michael Hall joint. The hospital scene is straight up out of a John Candy movie, and just how so much of the movie is comedic, quirky, and funny. The movie has a Sleepless in Seattle vibe to it and doesn't function as a traditional Star Trek movie, and I fucking love it. Thoughts? I would balk a bit at the Sleepless in Seattle comparison just because I'm not like a huge Sleepless in Seattle fan. I mean, I don't think Sleepless in Seattle is like the worst movie ever made or anything. I don't have any particular ill will toward it, but I remember watching it and going like, all right, it's fine. Tom Hanks and Meg Ryan, they're nice. Okay. Um, but overall, I agree with you. I mean, I wouldn't say that Voyage Home is my favorite, but I like it a lot, and I like it for the reasons that you list. It's a great change of pace. It's a very just a watchable, accessible movie. It's a Star Trek movie that if you have a friend or you know a partner or someone in your life that you hang out and you want to watch a movie and you feel like watching a Star Trek movie, but they aren't a Star Trek fan, and you want to put on a Star Trek movie that they will be able to get into and enjoy and not have to worry about the lore and the continuity and any of the horse shit that drags it down and makes it inaccessible and just sucks all the fun out of it. Um, Voyage Home is it. Voyage Home is it. Yes, it does function as a a good satisfying closing chapter to that 3-film trilogy, to that Genesis device trilogy, but it also works perfectly well on its own as a standalone movie, and it's a ton of fun, and I love it too. I still think, I mean, on my personal list of Star Trek movies, I would rank it behind Wrath of Khan and Star Trek 6 and First Contact and probably Star Trek Beyond. Like I wouldn't put it at the very, very top of my list, but I like it a lot. I think it's a terrific movie, and I'm glad you like it too, and I'm glad you watched it. Andy Lawler, Nook Neck, Steve. We see that getting that Klingon dictionary when I was a teenager paid off. That's like the one word I recognize from Klingon, Nook Neck, which I think means what do you want? It's a Klingon greeting. Don't ask me for more Klingon because I kind of think Klingon is dumb. Like the idea that people actually learn it and speak it. I just think that's kind of dumb. But I do know Nook Neck from having the Klingon dictionary when I was a kid. We occasionally get to enjoy your singing during your videos. I've been a musician most of my life, playing all brass instruments, some strings, a bit more piano, and pretty much any percussion instrument. God damn, Andy. All right. I started playing informally as a young kid and began formal training in 5th grade as part of my school band. In college, I received formal vocal training as a tenor. I've been a member of Band Together, St. Louis's LGBT plus community concert band, marching band, and color guard since 2014, though my COVID diagnosis in 2020 and my ongoing status as a long COVID patient forced me to go inactive. Music has always been and always will be a big part of who I am. All of my kids are also musicians, which has been immensely satisfying. Your serenading makes me wonder if you are a musician. Do you play any instruments or sing in an ensemble? If not, have you ever wanted to learn? What instruments do or have you ever wanted to play? Thanks and have a great weekend, everybody. I am very flattered that you seem to be taking a somewhat positive attitude toward my singing. My initial answer is if you've ever heard me sing, then you know the answer to all of those questions is no. I've never had any training. I've never done it in any sort of organized way. I've never sang in a choir or an ensemble or anything. I play no instruments. No. And I feel like, to me, my off-key warbling is all the evidence you need of that. But I mean, I've never seriously wanted to learn. I took a first-year guitar class when I was in high school, and did okay with it, and then but didn't stick with it and pretty much immediately forgot everything I had learned. And in my music, we had music appreciation as a required course in middle school. And every year you would learn a different instrument. And the first year it was the recorder, and the second year it was the guitar, and the third year it was piano. Or maybe it was piano second year and guitar. I don't know. It was one year was piano and 1 year was guitar. So, I mean, I learned like just really, really basic stuff on all of those instruments in that class. And again, it's completely gone. Like I have no retention of any of it. I couldn't play anything. I can barely play a kazoo. And so I've never had any serious desire to learn. I have occasionally had like sort of this stray like daydream of like, oh, wouldn't it be cool to be able to play guitar and sing? Wouldn't it be cool to like be in a band? That kind of thing. But I've never seriously pursued it because the thing is, it's too goddamn hard. Like maybe it's not for you. Maybe it's easy for you and you've been doing it, since you were young, and it comes more obviously, it comes more naturally to you than to me with all the instruments you play. But all of the times I have tried to learn an instrument or had to learn an instrument for a class or whatever, um, it's a struggle. Like it does not come naturally to me at all. It's too damn hard. And so I've never seriously pursued it. But thank you for finding it necessary or worth asking. I'm weirdly flattered by that. Um, Bobby or Brian the Brain Baker Heenan. You got me. I was going to call you Bobby. Brian the Brain Baker Heenan. Steve, the focus on the news was on Biden and his will he won't he decline the nomination, but then Saturday came and someone shot at Trump. It's not clear why the shooting happened at this time, but Republicans started to blame Democrats for painting a target on Trump with their rhetoric. Funny, but many of those same politicians said that Democrats were overreacting when in January of 2011, Congressperson Gabby Giffords was shot after Sarah Palin put up a webpage with a bullseye on Giffords' district. Republicans then said that Democrats were overreacting and pish-posh the whole issue. While writing this, J.D. Vance was announced as Trump's VP pick. I feel sorry for people who write dystopian fiction when reality seems to be racing to catch up to their creations. Fuck it. Everyone please vote blue because Democrats aren't perfect, but a damn sight better than the alternative. I'm off to eat cookies and milk to try to get some distance from reality. Thanks for your work and time. Thank you for saying what I could have said, but didn't have to say because you just said it. I second every word you just said there, my friend. Thinking Cat, with the Trump shooting, why is the media avoiding saying Trump, who has wished death and even ordered assassinations, getting the defense of not in our American... okay, hang on a second. With the Trump shooting, why is the media avoiding saying Trump, who has wished death and even ordered assassinations, getting the defense of not in our American after 90% of the MAGA Republicans? I'm just going to talk through it. I'm just going to push right through it. After 90% of the MAGA Republican talk is of killing and punishment of large numbers of minorities. Really, I wish this idea that Trump, a literal bully, is now a victim due to an ear injury. Also, the irony this is now being used to cover up the released Epstein files makes me suspicious, plus the discovery of a bomb on site. I think I see what you're getting at. I mean, it doesn't make me suspicious of anything. Like, I don't think that the assassination attempt was staged or was timed by the Trump campaign in order to distract people from Project 2025 or the Epstein files or the criminal convictions. I don't think that is what happened. There's no evidence of that whatsoever. But I do agree that, the media playing along with Trump trying to paint himself as a victim is gross. And the media playing along with the Republicans saying, basically, we need to tone down the rhetoric. We need to lower the temperature. You first, Democrats, as though the Democrats were the ones who jacked up the thermostat in the first place. It's ridiculous. It's hypocritical. And the fact that it's being taken seriously for a moment is frustrating, but the media has this instinctive need, this reflex to make everything a both sides issue. That's why you had Lester Holt asking fucking President Biden what he has done or plans to do to lower the temperature. Motherfucker, he's not the one who raised the temperature to begin with. What are you asking him for? You should be asking Trump that. What are you going to do to lower the temperature? Because fucking Biden's not the one who raised the temperature, who escalated the political rhetoric in this country. Are you kidding me? John Burns saw your shooting rant video. Reminded me of a video of Don Knotts mentioning a speech while hearing his approval rating is dropping like a stone. At the end, he blames the voters. What I thought was most interesting was the comparison of two shootings. But Theodore Roosevelt chose to speak after being shot, and his voice was needed as people were calling for a lynching of his assailant. At the Trump rally, in addition to the shooter, a member of the audience was killed. I think if someone else had been harmed or even killed, I think President Roosevelt would have calmed the crowd, but wouldn't have gone on with his speech, feeling it would have been insensitive to do so. You talk about disdain for violence, but even over a century ago, there were those calling for blood, and it was necessary for a good man to speak to calm those calling for blood to hear kind words. Theodore was also a third-party candidate, closer to a Robert Kennedy without Secret Service protection. See? Yeah, but who was the good man at the Trump rally who was going to calm him down? Like, there was no good man at the Trump rally who could have calmed people down. So, but that goes along. I mean, what I said in the video is that it wasn't like Theodore Roosevelt being shot. There were Republicans who were trying to compare Trump to Theodore Roosevelt and say, just like Teddy Roosevelt got shot and he got right back up. That's our Donald Trump. Like, my point in the video was, well, no, actually, it's nothing like that. And Trump himself is nothing like Theodore Roosevelt in 1,000 different ways. For one thing, Theodore Roosevelt was actually rich. So, yeah, but yeah, I think I see, but it's hard to tell sometimes with you, John. And by sometimes, I mean almost all the time. Lauren of the giant nerd variety. What Star Trek themed shirt do you desperately need but haven't been able to locate yet? This question brought to you by my ennui with life and disappointment in not finding the exact right Kira Nerys shirt. That's a really good question. I do have a lot of Star Trek shirts because I wear them in my Star Trek related videos. And I don't have a dedicated like Star Trek Voyager t-shirt to wear when I'm like doing an episode review of a Voyager episode or like a Trek Actually video with a Voyager theme. I would like to have like a Voyager themed shirt that I don't have. And I don't want to get one that just says, Star Trek Voyager with like the logo on it. I'd like to get something a little bit more creative than that. And same thing for Star Trek Enterprise. I don't have an Enterprise themed shirt, and again, same problem. Like, I don't want to just get a shirt that just has the show title on it or something. I want something a little bit, that is a reference to Enterprise or a reference to Voyager, but isn't like just the name of the show on a shirt. So one of those I would like to have. That's really about it. The other, all of the Star Trek shirts that I have that were ones that I felt like I really needed the shirt. Like I've either got it already or I designed something myself and self-printed it through like Teespring or something and just got it like that. I have a shirt that says Team Loci. And I made that myself and got it printed through like a t-shirt website. So I would do something like that. Maybe I should do something like that for a Voyager and Enterprise shirt, but I can't think what it would be. But yeah, something like that is as far as like Star Trek t-shirts that I don't yet have, like I remember when, they had the disco shirt in Discovery when you saw, I think it was Tilly and Michael that were wearing them when they were jogging through the ship. As soon as I saw that, and I realized as soon as I saw it, I thought, okay, they're going to merchandise that. And I instantly, I was like, I got to have that shirt. I think that's one of the coolest Star Trek shirts. And I got one, and then that one, it kind of shrunk in the wash and it didn't look as good on me anymore. So I got another one. But yeah, the disco shirt was the last one that I felt like, oh, I've got to have one of those. And I've got two of them now. The insufferable fatalist leftist, some random geek. Sorry, Steve. I did think you were talking about me. Not you only. Don't be too self-conscious. Not just you. And in fact, probably not even specifically you. But anyway, nevertheless, Steve, on July 14th, not only is that 5 days after my birthday, I am now 40. Welcome to the club. It is also International Non-Binary Day. July 14th was picked because it is right in the middle of International Women's Day, March 8th, and International Men's Day, November 19th. That's cool. I didn't know that. July is also Disability Pride Month. People proud to be disabled, much like queers. Queers shouldn't be ashamed of being queer. Fuck your cis hetero patriarchy. Being a disability is a fact of life for some folks and nothing to be ashamed of. You can grieve your loss of ability from an injury, but you shouldn't be shamed for being disabled. Disability Month commemorates the passing of the ADA, the Americans with Disabilities Act. The landmark bill was signed in 1990. That was only 34 years ago. Pride was 55 years ago. And remember, disability is the one marginalized category that anyone can be a part of. Speaking of disabled non-binary persons, should folks give money to Phoenix if they could? Posting the links in chat, charitylinks.page. And yes, absolutely. If people, I'll push the charity links link at the end of the show like I always do. But yes, of course, if anybody is able to and they are so moved to donate to support Phoenix, please do so. Absolutely. And you know the most amazing thing about the Americans with Disabilities Act? Signed by a Republican president, George H.W. Bush. Can you imagine a Republican president signing that bill today? Can you imagine a Republican? Can you imagine more than a handful, let's say, let me give them more credit than they probably deserve. Can you imagine more than a handful of Republican members of Congress and senators even voting for that bill today, let alone a Republican president enacting it? It's astonishing how far down the toilet our politics, especially on the right, have gone in the last 34 years. David, who is banned off Twitter for a week, and it's all your fault, teaches me to say I was hoping for Trump to get a stress-based aneurysm. I tried to appeal it by saying that my dark humor was being unfairly targeted by SJWs to destroy my free speech, but alas, the Twitter crew didn't buy it, despite being run by a feckless moron. Anyway, I managed to get through enough of the Star Trek prodigy for the episodes to turn the suck dial off and start being good. It's right around time amok. Anyway, I don't really have a question. Nice weather we're having in California, just perfect summer weather, hovering in the 70s or 80s in freedom units. And I got my bike fixed so I can actually enjoy it. Oh, I know. Should I make a 3-hour-long YouTube video breaking down everything wrong with Strange New Worlds in exhaustive detail? There, that's a question. I can call it Strange New Worlds Sucks, and here's why. An entirely new original title that I invented right this instant. I mean, if you want to make a video and guarantee that I will never ever watch it, then yeah, go for it. And yeah, I'm glad you are presumably enjoying Prodigy. You said you got to the point where it started being good. Yeah, I think that was pretty much my experience with it as well. I might have been into it by the time I got to Time Amok. But Time Amok is what, episode 8 of season 1. It's in the first half of the first season, and that was the one where I was like, okay, they got me. Like, this is good. You know, the first few episodes were like, I don't know about this. It takes a long time to hook you and to start getting good. And season 2 is the same way, even though season 2, I was already there because I loved season 1 so much. But season 2 has the same problem where the first few episodes are like, all right, come on, like, let's do this. But once it gets there and it stays there and it becomes really, really great. So I'm glad you're enjoying it. Stephen G. Clenard. Hey, Steve, I have a confession to make. Oh, no, Stephen. No doubt you have been hearing a lot of credible sounding rumors about cast and crew of the 1998 movie Velvet Goldmine being connected to the Star Trek Legacy series. Unfortunately, none of it is true. That was me. I made it all up. I don't know why I do these things. Star Trek Legacy and Christian Bale came up in the same Ask Away, and the wires in the brain sort of crossed up. The next thing I know is I'm posting made-up shit on online comment sections from multiple burner accounts, and things kind of take on a life of their own. I'm sorry, everyone. I'm shamed when I think that I may be the cause of Ewan McGregor getting asked a bunch of Star Trek trivia, or Jonathan Rhys-Meyers getting his hopes up for a much-needed career boost. Anyhow, do you know the guys at Trek Culture, and could you maybe give them a heads up to stop the presses on their top 10 credible rumors about Star Trek Legacy? Hashtag I gots the mot. Hashtag I gots a problem. Hashtag Brian Slade lives. I know Sean at Trek Culture, so I will pass it along and make sure that, you know, he moves that around to all the Trek Culture people, and they know that they need to stop making that video. Although maybe I won't. Seems like that might be pretty funny. And listen, you seem really upset. You said you're sorry. You said you feel ashamed. Look, don't worry about it. We all make mistakes. And if you want to, next time you have an available evening, you can come over here and we can hang out and drink some Natty Boh and listen to some Phil Collins and cheer you right up, you know? It's an open invitation. Agent Meister, whose wit is as dry as one of James Bond's martinis and almost as useful. Peldor Joy, Steve, what would your life be if it were a movie? Comedy, horror, drama, sci-fi allegory? And who would play you? If it were me, it would have to be a comedy, because God knows I could do with a laugh with the way the world is going lately. As for who would play me, I couldn't give a fig, since Zooey Deschanel is the love interest. If you impress me with your answer, I'll take a leaf out of J. Jonah Jameson's book and send you some meat. A nice box of Christmas meat. Best you can do. P.S. Great video on the aftermath of last Saturday's incident. Powerful stuff, and wouldn't it be great if Biden and company would convey a similar message with the same vim and vigor? Boy, wouldn't it. Who would play, what kind of movie would my life be? It would be an action drama, and I would be played, of course, by Ben Affleck, who is basically my twin anyway. Bored Barbarian under a new name. Sadly missed your last 3 to 4 Q&As due to in real life. Hope you don't mind a longer question. At this point, I still need to finish 3 to 4 eps of Prodigy Season 2, but I know how much you love Season 1, and presumably Season 2. I know you hate fun Easter eggs for Easter eggs' sake, but what was your favorite of Prodigy so far? Personally, I loved the Shattered Mirror episode as a whole, and the Enterpriseian ship with Captain Tuvix in particular. I was literally giddy with excitement when I heard the name, as I've always been in the hashtag Justice for Tuvix camp. I just wish they would have gotten Tim Russ to record a few lines, even just over the intercom, and pitch up slightly in editing if they didn't want to animate the character. P.S. Yes, Neelix is that bad, actually, but you made good points. Well, but of course, Tim Russ did not play Tuvix. Who did play Tuvix? Let me look that up real quick. Tom Wright. Tom Wright played Tuvix. And he was in a bunch of stuff. He was also in, what's another thing that Tom Wright's known for? I just saw him in something not that long ago. And I was really impressed. Well, anyway, I'm not going to look it up. I'm not going to spend all night. It's not exactly riveting watching me look up stuff from Tom Wright's filmography. But Tom Wright played Tuvix, not Tim Russ. And I can't remember any of the Easter eggs, to be honest. I barely remember the Tuvix thing, because it was just a line of dialogue, right? It was just like a reference to Captain Tuvix. I was so into the story and the characters and the things that are actually important that Prodigy got right in season 2. And I thought season 2 was excellent. That the Easter eggs barely even registered. I know there were a few. I remember none of them because they don't matter to me. What matters is that it got the important stuff right. The characters, the story, the storytelling from episode to episode. I thought it was all so well done. I'm sorry, I don't remember Easter eggs. I don't care about Easter eggs. Andrew Priest, salutations, my friend. Hope you and yours are surviving the shit show that is the USA these days. I appreciate your positive outlook and the fact you haven't been grounded down by everything that's going on. For what it's worth, every time you release an impassioned rant about U.S. politics or some shit on demographic of people, it gives me hope for your whole country that there are people like you over there. When someday things are better and you don't have to rant anymore, what kind of videos will you make instead? Maybe you could go back to doing those comics again. Man, they were good. The Star Trek photo comics with the action figures, like with my doll collection back there. I would love to have time to do some more of those. I love those. I would find something. I mean, that's my answer. If first of all, that's never going to happen. But if somehow all of our problems in politics were solved and I didn't feel the need to make videos about political topics anymore, I mean, I could make more Star Trek videos. I could make videos about other TV shows I like. I could make more videos about comics I like, more Batman and Superman. themed videos. I could do more comedy and more skits. I could do more stuffy videos. There's all kinds of things that I would love to do if I had more time. And if I didn't feel my attention pulled in other directions that I would love to do. So I don't think I would have any problem at all filling my work schedule if somehow, someday, uh, the social and political situation was not so screwed that I felt like I had to make videos about that on a regular basis. Um, Andrew Michael, I know your favorite season of Voyager is season 2 of Prodigy. But off the top of your head, can you think of a few episodes where Voyager did actually live up to its potential? I can think of some. Caretaker, Counterpoint, Year of Hell, Basics. Any you'd add? Well, I'm not a big fan of Year of Hell. Basics is all right, but kind of forgettable to me. I don't remember Counterpoint. Caretaker, of course, is the pilot, and I've always spoken highly of that. I've always said Voyager had one of the best, if not the best, pilot episode of Star Trek. The Thaw. That's the one I always talk about. The Thaw, I think, is the best episode Voyager ever did. I love that one, and I love their first Q episode. Death Wish is also really, really good. And there are some others over the years that I enjoyed. I talked about a couple of them in my Neelix video this week. There are 2 episodes in particular that I mentioned in my Neelix video that are Neelix centered episodes. One is Jetrel, from season 1, and the other is, or is it season? It's season 1 or season? I think it's season 1. And then the other is Mortal Coil from, I think, season 5. And those are both quite good episodes. So yeah, there are some good Voyager episodes. I've always said there are good Voyager episodes. I've never taken the position that Voyager is nothing but garbage from beginning to end. It has its moments. It's mostly complete mediocrity. But it has its moments for sure. Jeff Broviak / Empire Jeff. Would you rather be friends with Spock or Han Solo? What does Peppa Pig do after school? Her ham work. My last name, the W-I is pronounced as a V, and the first O is silent. Broviak is how you say the name. Well, I think I got it right this time, Jeff. Thank you for the pronunciation. Neelix is still more useful than Jar Jar Binks. The VP pick is from the great state of Ohio, and the Cleveland baseball team is leading the AL Central. Well, at least you can be proud of how good the ball team's doing. Thanks for the jokes, by the way. I especially appreciated that Peppa Pig does her ham work. I like that. Joe McClory, I don't disagree with your view of stopping the fatalism about the election and the trails going forward against the slide to authoritarianism, but I would like to push back on a recommendation you made as to how to fight back, namely supporting the DNC. Democrats are sadly the only real party to vote for against the Republicans, but there are ways that can support progressive Dems that do not support the organization that helps keep Dems from being progressive. Act Blue and Justice Democrats are both excellent organizations that are often spending against the DNC to get more progressive Dems through primaries. I agree supporting Dems is holding the line, but I think in the long run, giving power to orgs more progressive than the DNC is far more effective than supporting the DNC and hoping that they don't throw people under the bus for donations or in hopes for conservative votes that never pan out. Thoughts? No, I don't disagree at all. I think all I said in the video was you should register as a Democrat if you have to vote in the Democratic primary in your state. If you don't want, and I guess if you consider that supporting the DNC, okay, then we'll just disagree on that point. But and in states that have open primaries, you don't necessarily have to be a registered Democrat in order to vote in the Democratic primary. But a lot of states have closed primaries where you have to be a registered Democrat in order to vote in the primary. And I think voting in the primary is incredibly important, especially if we want to elevate more progressive candidates, because that's where that happens. So no, if you, and I think I even said in the video, if you register as a Democrat, the party, the DNC, might ask you for money. You don't have to give them any, but they might ask you if you register and give them your address. But no, I think I fully support choosing to give your actual your money or your time or whatever to more progressive organizations that are not the Democratic Party itself. I think Act Blue and Justice Democrats, I agree, they're both excellent organizations, and I would never argue with anybody supporting those organizations. My only thing in the video was if I want people to vote every time, primary election and general election. And in a lot of states, if you want to vote in a party primary, you have to be a registered member of that party. So I said, you should register as a Democrat if that's you. And I suppose in a sense that's supporting the DNC because you're registering with the party and allowing them to count you among their registered supporters. But that doesn't mean you have to donate to the DNC if you don't want to. General Contact Unit Problem Child, you think there will be anything like a real election in 2028 if Trump wins? Some leftists say the U.S. already doesn't have real elections, but I think it would be more accurate to say the U.S. doesn't have fair elections. Somewhere like Russia doesn't have real elections. The difference is even though the system is stacked against them, it is still possible for a Democrat to win the presidency if enough people vote for them. In Russia, literally 99% of the country could vote against Putin, and it wouldn't matter because the election is outright rigged. If Trump wins, I fear 2024 will be the last election where it's even possible for Democrats to win. And I think that's highly likely if they ditch Biden this close to the election. Like, I think that could only work if he resigns and bows out of public life so people can get used to Kamala Harris as the president, so she has an incumbency advantage. But that won't happen because of some bullshit about it being respectful to let Biden end his term. I mean, I have not crossed over into full-on doomerism where I say that if Trump wins, that it's guaranteed we won't have another election. But I do tell people, and I believe this myself, do you really want to take that chance? And do you really put something like that past Trump and the Republicans? Like, do you really feel like that would not be something they would be working towards? And those are not people that I want to put in charge of the country. I do not want to elect someone where I actually have a legitimate fear that I might not get to vote for somebody else, or that I might not get to vote for somebody else in a meaningful way. So, I mean, do I think it would be guaranteed that we would not have a real election in 2028 if Trump won this time? I wouldn't say guaranteed, but it's a very real possibility for me. And I fear that. And that's one of the reasons why I think it's absolutely essential that we stop Trump and the Republicans now for a start, and then continue to stop them and push them back in subsequent elections. But yeah, no, I think it's a legitimate fear. And I agree with you. Leftists say a lot of things that, I mean, and I count myself politically as a leftist, but there are a lot of leftists who claim, who act like they know a lot about an electoral system that they pay very little attention to and almost never participate in. And it's kind of annoying. Who just sort of shoot their mouths off and say things like, oh, we don't have elections in this country. They're still mad that Hillary got more votes than Bernie in the primary in 2016, and they just will not let that go. So they assume like, oh, we don't have real elections anyway. The guy I voted for didn't win 8 years ago, so there's no such thing as a real election. It's all rigged anyway. But I think you are more, your description is more accurate. That there are instances where it's more difficult for, and a lot of it depends on jurisdiction as well. In certain parts of the country, it's more difficult for one party or another to win, and it's more difficult in a lot of all over the country for people in third parties to even get on the ballot, much less win. So I mean, yeah, it is not the elections are not equitable across party lines at all, but they are free elections. Like if you get the most votes, you're going to win. It's not a rigged election. So I agree with you there, and I also agree with you that our best bet is for Biden to stay in at this point. Yes. Manuel Paternoster. Hi, Steve. I hope you are doing well. It's been some time since I last submitted a question, but I am always enjoying your content, so keep it up. My question relates to two of your recent videos concerning the election. Someone took a shot at Trump. Now what? And don't panic. I am from Germany, so I don't have all the insights into the important people of the Republican and Democratic parties. So I would like to know what people on both sides do you think would most likely be future candidates for the office of the president? Which candidates, if there are any, would you prefer to step in for Joe Biden in the upcoming election if he were to step down? What are your thoughts on J.D. Vance? He seems to be even worse than Trump himself, from what I've heard and read in the media. I really hope Trump will be defeated again this year. Fingers crossed. Thanks again for all your content. My best, Manuel. Well, thank you very much. Well, on the Democratic side, if Biden were to step down now before this election, to me, the only other candidate who should and could possibly step in at this point would be Vice President Harris, and if that's what happened, then that would be that if Vice President Harris, who is already on the ticket as the vice president, if she was bumped up to president, then I believe that would allow her campaign to still use all of the money that was fundraised under the Biden campaign. But if they dump Biden off the ticket and Harris doesn't replace him as the nominee, then there are laws restricting how much of the Biden money raised could be used for the new Democratic candidate. So just on a pure financial basis, the only viable replacement candidate to my mind would be Kamala Harris. But again, I don't think that's going to happen, and I don't think we should be waiting for it to happen. Uh, as for other politicians on the Democratic side who could run in the future, Gavin Newsom, obviously Kamala Harris herself, after as the sitting vice president, she would obviously be a leading contender. Governor Gavin Newsom from California, a lot of people are talking very positively about him. He's a great politician. I mean, he's a really smooth talker. He's a really smart guy. He's a great politician. Who else? Pete Buttigieg, who ran in the primaries against Biden and is now in Biden's cabinet, the Secretary of Transportation. And it's very early yet, and I don't think he should be considering a presidential run anytime soon. But for the future, I think my state's governor, the governor of Maryland, Wes Moore, is a fantastic prospect. If he remains in politics and he continues to be successful and he compiles a good record as the governor of Maryland and he wants to run for president, I think he would be fantastic. He's relatively young. I think he's just a little older than me. And he's good looking. He's a young, handsome guy. He's cool. He relates well to people on just a one-on-one basis. He has a great personal story, a great personal history, a military background, a published author. He's great. Like he's great. I'm so proud and happy to have him as my state's governor. And I think he could be a presidential candidate at some point. I don't think it should be anytime soon, but at some point, I think he would be a great one. As for the Republicans, I mean, yeah, there's Vance now because he's the VP candidate. There's a bunch of shitty Republican senators that I'm sure would love to run for president. I'm sure Ted Cruz would love to run again. I'm sure fucking Josh Hawley would love to run. I'm sure DeSantis down there in Florida would love to run again. There's a bunch of absolutely nightmare Republican people, just absolute pieces of shit on the right wing side, who have enough name recognition that I'm sure they will be running for something at some point. Yeah, so there are some names that come to mind. David, who was gifted a membership, and he ain't going to waste it. Howdy, Steve. As part of my interest with climate change, roadway safety, and more affordable, accessible travel, I've been trying to keep my car use down, my biking and transit use up, and encouraging others I know to give something similar a try. Usually this translates into bike commuting to work or skipping farther stores for closer ones that I can reach without a car. In that vein, I was wondering what your walk, bike, transit world is like. Do you live in a place where you can do some or all of your weekly errands without driving? Or have you ever lived somewhere like that? Either way, safe travels, however you get there. So, I suppose it's conceivable that I could do my necessary weekly errands without driving, but public transportation in my area is such that it would be a major imposition for me to do that. Like, it would take so much time out of my day to have to walk to the bus stop, get on the county commuter, at just the right time. And, like, we do have a public transportation system here, but it is underfunded and not super convenient. I'm glad we have it. I wish we had more of it, but I am fortunate enough where I live now that I can do all of my necessary business during the week without having to drive very far. Like, everything I need is within a few miles, is within just a few minutes drive. So I don't have to drive very far. I do drive, but I don't have to drive very far. And because it's just me living here and I'm a relatively cheap date and I don't eat much during the week and the various other factors, I don't actually have to leave the house all that much. So I might actually leave the house to drive somewhere maybe once a week, sometimes even less frequently than that, if I'm all stocked up on stuff and I'm not running down the stores so quickly. Other than that, like, I'll leave the house to go for walks and stuff just for recreation or for exercise. Not lately because it's been so damn hot around here, but as a rule, when the weather's nice, I'll try to go for a walk either early in the morning or in the evening, just to get out of the house and go somewhere. But in terms of necessary travel, I do have to drive, but it's fortunately it's not a very long drive, and it's not something that I have to do very, very frequently. Matthew Datcher, I just saw NerdSync's video. AI companies stole my videos. It appears to only be on Nebula at the time I'm writing this question. The host pointed to an article on proofnews.org about the scraping of online content by AI builders. I went to Proof's YouTube AI search tool, and your name was my first search. If the tool is to be believed, 6 of your videos posted between 2018 and 2020 are among those collected. What are your thoughts and feelings on this as a content creator? We have this in common because my name was my first search too. When I heard about this, I saw people tweeting about it, and so I did the same thing. I went to the website and searched for myself in the database, and yes, my results confirm your results. There were 6 of my videos that came up. I mean, I'm not like thrilled about it, but I can't see the point in caring all that much. I'm not really all that upset about it. I've barely thought about it since I looked it up, and I posted a couple tweets about it that day, mostly in kind of a joking tone. I mean, I'm not that upset about it. It's not because I don't think there's anything wrong with it. It's just that, what am I going to do about it? What am I going to do? And at this point, how has it hasn't harmed me in any material way at this point. I'm not saying that it won't eventually, and I'm not saying that this sort of thing isn't harmful or isn't a violation of creators' rights. I'm just saying, for me personally, I've got other stuff to think about. I've got other stuff to worry about. I'm not going to get all worked up about it. Yeah. And who knows, maybe someday there'll be a class action suit and I can, get a little scratch from it. We'll see. Cara Hughes. Hi, Steve. This is my main question because, see, Cara asked me a secret question before this that I didn't put in my script here. It was a secret question just between the two of us. But this is the main question that everybody gets to see. This is my main question. Is it true that you don't need to take an oath on a Bible or any religious text? That I could, if I wanted, take an oath on the Lord of the Rings if I wanted? While I understand this is a somewhat frivolous question, I just want to know if it's true. Thanks for letting me ask the question. Oh, of course. It's a great question. Yes, it's true. Here in the United States, you are not required by law to take an oath of office on a Bible or any religious text. That is true. It may not be true for long if the Republicans regain control of the federal government, because they have gone, one of the many things they have gone completely mask off on in recent years is they totally just want to get rid of separation of church and state. Like, they've complained about it for years, and now they are full bore like, hey, we want to get rid of separation of church and state. We think it's a bogus concept. We don't like it. We want we want to make this an explicitly Christian nation. We have United States senators coming, Josh Hawley, I mentioned a minute ago, coming out and saying the words, I am a Christian nationalist. Like, they're completely just out with it now. So yes, if you were elected to an office in this country and you wanted to take your oath of office on a copy of The Lord of the Rings, I don't think there's anything that would prevent you from doing that. Just as, yeah, I mean, most people who take an oath on a book use a Bible because Christianity is the dominant religion in this country. But Muslims who are elected to office will often choose to take their oath on a copy of the Quran, or if they're a member of another religious faith, they will use whatever the appropriate holy book is. Or a lot of people who don't use a holy text choose to put their hand on a copy of the Constitution, which honestly makes the most sense. Like, you've been elected to an office that is operating under the legal authority of the Constitution. That's the basis of our rule of law. So if you're going to put your hand on anything when you swear an oath of office, especially if in that oath there is language to the effect of, I will uphold the Constitution, which is often a part of oaths of office in this country, it makes sense to put your hand on the Constitution. Why would you put your hand on the Bible? Put your hand on the Constitution. That's what you're swearing to uphold. But anyway, yes, long answer to your very simple question. Yes, it is true. You don't have to put your hand on the Bible or any holy text. Wolfie Basatch with the penultimate question of the Big Ten. Ooh, boy. That sounded more sarcastic than I meant it. It was the Queen's Jubilee year, and I'd entered the village hoppity hop race. The competitors were myself, another 12-year-old called Mills, and 8 hopeless 6-year-old Nuff Muffins. The time came and the 10 bouncy gladiators assembled on the line. The starting pistol cracked. We were off. Mills blasted ahead, but my hand slipped off the grip. I readjusted, but a muffin veered into my path. I powered on, my superior upper body strength sending the 6-year-old spinning into oblivion. Within 10 bounces, I'd cleared the pack. Blood coursed through my veins. I bounced hard, and I bounced true. The gap narrowed, but as Mills rounded the halfway post, I saw sudden horror in his eyes. I drifted around the post and saw what he'd seen. Something cataclysmic had occurred, and they'd all fallen off their hoppers. It was a Nuff Muffin extinction-level event, and me and Mills were hurtling directly into it. To be continued. And so my question is, do you think cliffhangers are an overused plot device? At the moment, no. If you had asked me 20 or 30 years ago, I would have said yes, because a lot of TV shows use them, especially at the end, if they did a season ending cliffhanger, or, if there was like a 2-parter, the first half almost always would end on a cliffhanger. So back in the day, I would have said, yes, they are an overused plot device. But now you don't see them as often. Now, the way certain streaming series are scripted, are structured, where, it's a very heavily serialized story. There are times when I wish that somebody would bother to write a fucking cliffhanger, because at least a cliffhanger is a kind of ending. I mean, it's not a very elegant ending. It's not the sort of ending that I necessarily look forward to. It's kind of a cheap hook, but at least it's a hook. A lot of episodes in streaming shows, they just kind of end. It's like, well, anyway, that's over. Like, they don't end on a cliffhanger. Because see, a cliffhanger is a very specific kind of hook, a very specific kind of ending. A cliffhanger is something potentially game-changing is about to happen to our heroes, to our main character or characters, and we don't know what it's going to be. They're teetering on the precipice. They are hanging off the edge of the cliff, as it were, and we don't know what's going to happen. So we need to come back next time to see what's going to happen, to see if they survive the next 10 seconds, right? That's a cliffhanger. The way a lot of episodes in streaming shows end today is not with cliffhangers, but just with an unresolved beat or an unresolved issue or just an incomplete scene. Like, something will happen and then the characters will be like, well, gee, what next? And then that's the end. Like, it's a very unsatisfying. a cliffhanger is not a resolution by design. A cliffhanger is not a resolution, but it feels like an ending. It feels like a button. It feels like, oh, boom. Okay, this is, we leave at the point of maximum urgency and maximum tension, and we'll be back next time to see how this works out, right? So, I mean, a cliffhanger is a kind of unresolved beat, but it's a very specific kind that is designed to really to turn your interest up as high as it can go and guarantee that you will come back to see the conclusion. And a lot of streaming episodes don't end with cliffhangers, don't end with, to be continued, whether that's on screen or not. It ends with, well, anyway, we'll pick it up next time. And I don't think that's good. Like, I prefer cliffhangers to that. WWZ Say, who is lost in Stefanicville. Oh, my condolences. Mr. Shives, let me first say that after years of mooching your content, I have seen the light and finally joined the community of your fine supporters. Thank you very much. Does this make you my bitch? And will I have as much control over your decisions as Crow does Thomas? No, not unless you have your hand fully up me, and we don't know each other that well. Speaking of the supreme thwart, all right, nice. I must say I fully expected the outcomes rendered. My curiosity lied in what degree of constitutional origami we would be treated to. Fold, fold, crease, crinkle, fold, crease. It is a dildo. Now go fuck yourselves, believers in equality. As Wayun asked Jake, please tell me you are not that naive. A question you are waiting for a question. Do you believe? I mean, truly believe? And if so, in what or who? This kind of ties into a later question. I need to hold my tongue here. No is not acceptable for don't we all believe in something or someone at some time in our lives. I currently believe in that white bandage on Maga's right ear. Who would have known that the ear would bleed so much? Those with pierced ears excluded. Did you notice Trump's blood was red? MAGA red? Well, what other color would it be? Yeah, I mean, there is a lot of... It's, I mean, the Trump campaign is being very cagey about releasing any sort of detail, any sort of medical detail about the nature of Trump's injury. We know he has some kind of boo-boo on his ear, but they don't want us to see it. They don't want to tell us specifically what it was or how bad it was. Presumably, if it wasn't that bad, well, yeah, why? It certainly doesn't look like it's still bleeding. That bandage that he had on his ear this week was white. You never saw any blood on it. So if he doesn't need to bandage it, why is he bandaging it? And why is the bandage so big? It's conceivable that that's just a bit of political theater. Yeah, well, so what do I believe in? I believe in, there's something I could really say right now, but I don't want to say it yet because it's a future question. It's a question coming up in a few minutes. But what I do believe in this case, I believe in the potential for things to get better. That's what I believe in. I'm an atheist. I don't believe in God. I don't believe in anything supernatural. But I believe in the potential for humanity to make things better. Now, of course, we also have the opposite potential to just completely fuck things up. But I choose to focus on our positive potential in the face of so much evidence of our negative potential. Siamak, who is late again, but submitting, and he is annoyed. Greetings, Steve. I certainly hope you're well, but I'll cut to the chase. What the fuck are the Dems doing? We have a fucking candidate. He's an incumbent, and they're arguing in public that if he wipes his nose, he's unfit. Do they want to lose? I'm absolutely out of my mind that this has gone on for 3 weeks now. Care to vent some more with me? Well, I mean, I'm right there with you. I think you could probably tell through videos I've done and through exchanges we've had on Facebook recently that you and I are very much on the same page with this. Yeah, Biden is the guy. Biden says he's the guy. Biden says he's not leaving. They can't force him to leave, right? Like, that's the thing. A lot of people don't realize. People say, well, the Democrats should get together and force him to leave. They can't. Like, he is the nominee unless he decides to step down. And of course, maybe they could persuade him, sure, but they would have to do that. And it doesn't look like they're going to. He has said repeatedly, I'm not going anywhere. His campaign has said repeatedly, he's not going anywhere. His White House staff has said repeatedly, he's not going anywhere. Kamala Harris has said, Joe's not going anywhere. Joe's the candidate. And as you point out, he's the incumbent. His polling is actually not bad. In fact, his polling recently in the last week or so has regained whatever he lost after that shitty debate performance. Like the original premise of, oh my God, we've got to get him to drop out so we can get a stronger candidate in there. That whole conversation kicked into high gear after his terrible debate performance. Understandably so at the time, because that was a really rough night. But the polls have bounced back since then. So and I mean, he's not running away with it. Like, it's still closer than it should be, or closer than I would like it to be. But it's not. People act like, oh, Biden's cooked. Biden's cooked. There's no way he can win. Like, what? What election coverage are you watching? Because yeah, he's not like he's not acing it or anything. He's still a lot more unsteady than I would like him to be. But look who he's running against. Like, yes, of course, if Joe Biden in his present condition with his present deficiencies was running against Mitt Romney, yeah, we'd probably be in trouble, right? He's running against Donald Trump. So we're doing okay, right? We're doing okay. That's why I said in that one video I made, don't panic. But Democrats always panic. Don't lose your shit. Democrats always lose your shit. Always lose our shit. Don't be a chicken. Don't be a coward. Be decisive. Be strong. Make a decision and stand behind it. Democrats are historically terrible at that. We shouldn't be. We should be incredibly confident. We should be incredibly strong. We're not. We're chicken shits. We're constantly looking at the polls, scared to death if a poll number drops a few points, scared to death if a Republican says something that makes us look bad. Oh God, oh it's over, oh it's over, oh it's over. We are so quick to preemptively surrender, and it pisses me off because there is no reason why we should be that way. Everything about our policies, our voter registration, our party machine, our party apparatus, our ability to raise money, our candidates, their ability to connect with people, to articulate the message. I mean, we should be moving and acting from a position of strength on a regular basis, and we put ourselves in a position of weakness for no reason. And it pisses me off, and it is an endless source of frustration. So I could vent more, but I'm going to move on. But yeah, you and I are very much in the same page. Russell, hey, Steve, I watched your So What video on Trump. Breathe, breathe. I don't think many people who thought the attempt was staged has concluded anything. Like you, I say it's a starting point. But the more I read on this guy, the more disturbed he just sounds, and it is very unfortunate that some nut with a gun can come close to any presidential candidate. I would think after what happened with Reagan, such attempts would be damn near impossible, especially in today's society. Oh, well, the one point you brought up there was many people figure it's hopeless now, so why bother voting? That has not been an argument. I personally don't think Biden is a good choice. Sure, he's better than Trump, but that's like saying eating dirt is better than eating shit. And I say this in a calm voice. I'm not getting excited and worked up here. Also, the fact there has been many talks of Biden stepping down. I don't think Harris would be a bad idea at all. In fact, had she ran, I would have voted for her. Thoughts? I've got bad news for you, because you are going to have you're going to have to eat either dirt or shit. You don't have a choice. However, depending on which way this election result goes in November, you are either going to eat dirt or eat shit. That's just what's going to happen. There is no third alternative. So which would you rather eat? Like, I mean, I feel like I've made this point many times, not just to you, not just in response to your questions, but just in general, I've made this point, and not just me, obviously, lots of people who are trying to get people still doing this, fence sitting routine to just settle down and accept reality. If Biden is dirt and Trump is shit, one of them is going to win. You're either going to eat dirt or eat shit. It doesn't matter who you vote for. It doesn't matter if you don't vote, right? If you don't vote, if you say, I can't vote for either one of them in good conscience, I'm sitting this one out, or I'm doing something that is basically just the same as sitting it out and voting for Kennedy or voting for Jill Stein or whoever. You're still going to have to either eat dirt or eat shit, because one of those guys is going to be the president. So you're not actually helping yourself or helping anyone by saying, I'm just not going to vote, or I'm going to vote for a third party candidate or whatever. You're not doing anything good for anybody by doing that. The only choice that gives you the opportunity to do anything, even slightly relatively good for anybody, is voting for Joe Biden. And yeah, okay, in your analogy, he's dirt. But again, you will be forced to eat dirt or eat shit when this is over. Which do you want to eat? I'm not saying either choice is desirable. I personally would love to have a delicious Wendy's spicy chicken sandwich, but that's not on the ballot. It's dirt or shit. What are you having? And finally, from Dana, happy Friday, Steve. You mentioned the Strange New Worlds episode, Lift Us Where Suffering Cannot Reach, at some point. I'm definitely curious about it, especially since you said it's a reference to the Ursula Le Guin essay story thingamy, The Ones Who Walk Away from Omelas. And you know I love her work, and I have some very strong thoughts about that one in particular. So I'd love to watch it and discuss it with you at some point, and I think it'd be great to do it as a watch-along, so we can include all of our online friends. But I don't want to interrupt the rhythm we've got going for Trek Reluctantly. Do you have any ideas or suggestions? P.S. Also, do you believe in Joe Hendry? I believe in Joe Hendry. I believe in Joe Hendry. I do. Yes, I do believe in Joe Hendry. I am a recent convert. I believe very much in Joe Hendry. I love the thought that there are people watching this who have no idea what the fuck I'm talking. Who the fuck is Joe Hendry? He's the person in whom I believe. I love how adorably you are pretending, Dana, that we haven't worked this out already. Dana's like asking this question, like totally innocent, like, gee, I sure would love to watch that Strange New Worlds episode with you, but I'd also like it to be a watch along so, other people can join the conversation too. But, oh gosh, what should we do? It's adorable. So what Dana and I have decided to do is a week from tonight, so next Friday, we're going to do a special bonus Star Trek watch along. It won't technically be a Trek Reluctantly episode, but it also won't be a back row episode, which is what I call it when we watch movies together. Sometimes it'll just be a special standalone watch along live stream where Dana and I and any of you who want to watch with us and have access to Strange New Worlds episodes, we'll do a watch along of the Star Trek Strange New Worlds episode, Lift Us Where Suffering Cannot Reach, which is inspired by the Ursula K. Le Guin short story, The Ones Who Walk Away from Omelas. Dana is a big fan of Le Guin, as I know are some of you as well. And we'll watch the episode together, and then we will talk about it afterwards. So that'll be next Friday, not tonight, obviously, but next Friday. So yeah, we're looking forward to that. So that is what we're going to do about that, Dana and everybody else. All right, that is it for the patron and member questions. Of course, there is this one more piece of business that I need to get to before I turn my full attention to the live chat, and that is to debut a brand new Stuffy and Friends short. So this Stuffy and Ethan Tracy, the TNA wrestler, yes indeed, the very same. I'm going to show you this brand new Stuffy and Friends short. And this will go up as a standalone YouTube short on my channel tomorrow, but you get to see it first tonight before anybody else. So please do enjoy this brand new Stuffy and Friends short. Hello.
You went all the way to the UPS store and back already?
Yeah. I just drove really, really fast.
I wish you wouldn't do that. One of these days you might have a terrible accident.
Gotta die of something.
Well, unless you're a Hydra.
The villains from Captain America?
No, those tiny animals that live in water. They don't die of old age.
Since when?
Since they were born, innit?
It is true, the minuscule water polyps are spared the ravages of senescence to which all other beings are cruelly subjected. They are biologically immortal.
Would they still die in car accidents, though?
I suppose, if there were cars small enough for them to drive in.
Not such hot shit now, are you? Ta-da! I'm shooting some more Stuffy shorts tomorrow, actually, because that was the last one that I had in the can. So more Stuffy coming. All right, let's turn to the live chat for a while here. Thank you, everybody, for hanging out and for watching me answer other people's questions and perhaps some of your questions as well. Let's see what we have going on in the chat. Oh, and Don Claus Burn Jenkins points out, if you have Showtime, Paramount Plus is included. So anyone who has access to Showtime and would like to join, because yes, Strange New Worlds is on Paramount Plus, and I think it might be available on other platforms outside of the U.S., but here in the United States, and I think in most other places where the show is available, it's on Paramount Plus. So yeah, we'll do that on Friday, a week from tonight. Metalinguist says, I love your Herzog. Well, thank you. And Ethan Tracy as well. Nice Werner Herzog impression. I mean, I don't think it's all that great, but it's close enough. And at this point, I don't think of it as a Herzog impression. I think of it as just Hans's voice, but obviously it's a Herzog impression. Thank you. I'm glad you appreciate it. CMAX says, love the Red Sox pint glass, Steve Shives. Yeah, I'm not as much. I don't follow the Red Sox as closely as I used to, but the Red Sox used to be my my backup team after the Orioles, because right when the Red Sox were really getting hot in the early and mid 2000s, when they finally won the World Series, and they had some really good years, that was when the Orioles were just not. I mean, there are many years where the Orioles have not done well. So I was rooting for the Red Sox because I'm an American League guy. First and foremost, even though that distinction really doesn't mean anything anymore. But yeah, I was rooting for the Red Sox. I loved watching the Red Sox win the series in 2004. And so yeah, I got that. I think that was a birthday present from my mom around that time. So yeah, I still have my Red Sox glass. John Burns with a super chat. R.I.P. Bob Newhart. A few words. I actually listened to The Button Down Mind of Bob Newhart earlier today. For the first time in years. I had heard it before, but it was the first time in a very long time that I had listened to it in remembrance of him and in commemoration of his death. And I mean, he's one of the most influential comedians who ever lived. He's certainly one of the most influential, if not the most influential comedian of the last half of the 20th century. I mean, most of what he did not invent. Like, he was not the first guy to pretend to have a telephone call. He did not invent that form, but he popularized it more than any other individual comic. And he popularized the medium of stand-up, I think, more than any individual person of that era. I mean, even Lenny Bruce. I think Lenny Bruce found his greatest notoriety around the same time, but it was a little bit after Newhart. And Newhart had a lot more mainstream success than Lenny Bruce did, even though obviously Lenny Bruce was incredibly important for a lot of reasons and was a great comic in his own right. And there were other great stand-up comics as well, or monologuists, people like Shelley Berman, who the closest analog to what they were doing is stand-up comedy, although it wasn't quite the same as what we think of as stand-up comedy today. But that was what Newhart was doing. And I mean, that first album, The Button Down Mind of Bob Newhart, it won the Best Album Grammy that year. Like, not Best Comedy Album, Best Album. It won Album of the Year at the Grammys that year. That's how successful, that's how big that album was. And of course, since then, obviously great star of TV, the Bob Newhart Show, in the 70s, Newhart in the 80s, both legendary shows. And he was effortlessly funny. He was a guy who he would make you laugh by how he said stuff. He would make you laugh by how he reacted to stuff. He was like a Jack Benny type comic where the laugh wasn't necessarily from his punchlines or what he was saying. It was how he was reacting to things. That's why his one-sided phone call bits are all so great, because that's what it is. He's reacting to things that the other person, the imaginary person on the other side of the phone is saying. So the whole bit is just him reacting to things. And that's where he's funny. That's where his comic strengths come from. And that's where his humor in his sitcoms came from. Like, he was the guy who was reacting to what was happening around him and reacting in a funny way and saying things in a way that just his cadence, his tone made it funny, even if it wasn't funny at all on the page. Like, the way he said it made it funny. He was a genius. And he had a long life. He was 94. I think he knew how beloved he was. I think he knew how appreciated he was. And, may he rest in peace. He was a legend. David Chalfin says, watching you while desperately trying to mitigate cloud strike issues at work. I'm so sorry. How do you feel about the reporting of NPR lately? I mean, they haven't annoyed me as much as MSNBC and CNN, but that's a pretty low bar. They've been fine. I mean, NPR, I like NPR. I listen to NPR regularly. I contribute to my local NPR station. But NPR has always had, I guess because they're public radio and they want to make sure that everybody knows that they're trying to call it down the middle and that kind of thing. But NPR, it always has this tendency to give the right wing more grace than it deserves. And I don't like to see that, especially now with all that's at stake and with how irredeemably toxic the right has become. But they're not as bad as CNN or MSNBC have been lately. Kirak 2011 with a super chat. Thank you very much. He says, I will lay off the same old debate for a while. It's just frustrating to be in the situation we are in. Thank you for listening to me, bitch. I, like you, don't want Trump in office. Well, we agree on that very much. We agree on that. Steve Schmeling says, I found more MST Star Trek V references. Puma Man and Spock's thruster boots. Mr. Spock, he flies like a moron if you want the flavor of whiskey in your beans. Oh, I love MST3K. Yeah. Yeah, there are some Star Trek references throughout. Daryl Lett says, okay, Steve, I saw your video rant on the Trump assassination attempt, and here in Michigan, we have a saying for someone who does a rant. We say, now tell us how you really feel. Yeah, I've heard that one before. Isaiah Taylor says, my favorite TOS movies, The Voyage Home, The Undiscovered Country, The Wrath of Khan, the motion picture, and last, The Final Frontier. Interesting. Okay. No love for The Search for Spock. Kirak 2011, I was thinking about the Big Bopper the other day. I was talking on the phone with Dana, and I made a Big Bopper joke, and it just went right by her. Sorry, Dana. I didn't mean to embarrass you, but zoom. Yeah, the Big Bopper did a fake phone call. Absolutely. Yeah, Chantilly Lace. Absolutely. Hello, baby. This is the Big Bopper speaking. Oh, John Burns with the super chat. So, Loaxana Troy, in your next Star Trek comic, it will be a cold day in hell before I spend money on a Loaxana Troy action figure. So no. Andrew Klang, once again, Rodney getting no respect. I love Rodney Dangerfield. Actually, Rodney Dangerfield said one of the funniest things I've ever heard in my life, and it wasn't even on one of his stand-up specials or albums or in a movie. It was, he was going in for surgery for something near, not at the very end of his life, but kind of getting near the end of his life. And he had to go into the hospital for surgery, and he was going in, and there were some reporters outside who, were asking him questions before he went in. And they said, one of the reporters said, "Rodney, how long do you think this is gonna take? How long are you gonna be in the hospital?" And Rodney said, "Well, if all goes well, a couple of days, and if all doesn't go well, about an hour and a half." He was the best. He was great. So I'm talking about Bob Newhart because he just died. And I do think Bob Newhart is better than Rodney Dangerfield if we're going to lay our cards on the table. But I love Rodney Dangerfield. No disrespect meant to Rodney Dangerfield whatsoever. Simon Moody says, regarding the t-shirt issue, why not double dip Voyager and Enterprise with an all-in-one? Porthos peeing on Neelix's ankle. Oh, good idea. Good idea. Oh, hey, geek. Sorry you missed the Stuffy short. Well, you can watch it tomorrow when it goes up as a short standalone, or just watch this later. Gedrin Y says, my favorite Bob Newhart role is still Bernard in the Rescuers movies. He has had a lot of other good roles, but those movies are top. So I've had a couple other people mention those to me too. I never really was into the Rescuers movies, so I can't speak for that. But yeah, good for him. Yeah, he was great in almost everything I ever saw him in. He was my favorite part of Elf. I think Jason and I mentioned that when we reviewed Elf on Late Seating a few years ago. That, I mean, like Elf I didn't hate Elf. Elf is fine, but it's like every time Bob Newhart is on screen, I'm like, okay, this is funny. And then every time Bob Newhart is not on screen, which unfortunately is most of the movie, I'm like, all right, can we check in on Bob Newhart? What's he doing? Knit and Crochet Tiger, what in the holy name of Grogu is a Nuff Muffin? You are asking the wrong guy. Presumably it is a British term referring to a child, to like an ankle biter. I would imagine would be the equivalent or something like that. Dana asks, what if one of your fans gifted you a Loaxana Troy doll? Well, then I guess I could just keep it in a drawer until I needed it, if I ever did need it for a comic. I would hate for one of my fans to waste their money, though. Oh, Isaiah, you forgot the Search for Spock. Well, that makes me feel better. That one comes between The Wrath of Khan and the motion picture. Who can forget the scene of Kirk stealing the Enterprise? Exactly. So many. Star Trek 3. I feel like Star Trek 3 has gotten more appreciation lately, but when I was growing up, Star Trek 3 was like the forgotten one because everybody loves Wrath of Khan. Everybody loves The Voyage Home. And of course, The Voyage Home was the one that made just a ton of money and was, the Voyage Home being so successful is the reason that we got pretty much every Star Trek thing that came after it. Like The Voyage Home really was like, people don't realize how important The Voyage Home was for the future of Star Trek. But everybody loves Voyage Home. Everybody loves Wrath of Khan. People remember Star Trek 5 because it was the really, really bad one. People remember Star Trek 6 because it was the really, really good one that allowed the original crew to kind of go out on top. People sort of forget Search for Spock. And I love Search for Spock. Like, I don't think it's as good as Wrath of Khan or Star Trek 6 or the very, very, very best of the movies, but man, Search for Spock is a good movie. Oh man, Metalinguist. Yeah, a fan. You mean a fan sending me a Loaxana Troy doll? Sounds like something one of the Jackals would do. It does. It totally does. Andrew Klein, do you hate Loaxana Troy so much you don't like Half a Life? No, Half a Life is the only Loaxana Troy episode that I genuinely enjoy. I think Half a Life is a good episode. It's so good that even Loaxana Troy's presence cannot bring it down. And my favorite part of it is it has a really happy ending because Timothy gets away. John Burns says, and then make a comic video that pans over to the drawer for the punchline. I don't make No, you can't do it. It's not a comic's not a video, man. A comic's a comic. You can't do a pan in a comic. Um, Oh, Steve Schmeling, yes, the actor who played Captain, yes, James B. Sicking, one of the great character actors in television. Yes, he played Captain Styles. Of course, he was best known probably for Hill Street Blues, and was in a bunch of stuff. Yes, he passed away just recently as well. Absolutely, yeah, yeah, yeah. He was great. Um, yeah, Knit and Crochet Tiger. Search for Spock. Who could forget the very first Vulcan porn? Yep, when Savick gives Spock a hand job. Absolutely. Oh, that's yes, Sentai Roger. Yes, he was Doogie Howser's dad, and Doogie Howser as well. Absolutely, he was in a bunch of stuff. He was in a bunch of stuff. Um, some random geek. Some Star Trek 3 has Christopher Lloyd overacting in a very entertaining way. Yes, Captain Krug again, the forgotten Klingon. I love Captain Krug, or Commander Krug, I guess technically. Um, I love Commander Krug. And again, he has one of my favorite lines in any Star Trek movie when he takes the crew hostage and he orders everybody to be beamed up except for Kirk, and Spock is laying there unconscious. So Krug orders his ship to beam everybody up except for Spock and Kirk says, "Why don't you take the Vulcan too?" And Krug says, "Because you wish it." Like, that's just Hall of Fame level pettiness. That's just, I mean, you got to admire that. Um, Andrew Klang, Natty Bo is our charming local abbreviation for the beer National Bohemian. And National Bohemian beer originated in the city of Baltimore and is always very closely associated with Baltimore and more broadly with the state of Maryland. So yes, if I was inviting someone over to my home here in Maryland to do Maryland things, one of the obviously we would be eating crabs and sprinkling Old Bay on stuff, and we would also be drinking Natty Bo. That is the official cuisine, the unofficial official cuisine of the state of Maryland. Crabs seasoned with Old Bay and Natty Bo. All the Natty Bo you could drink. And then, and also in that answer, I mentioned Phil Collins to Stephen because I know that Stephen is very much not a fan of Phil Collins. So I was giving him a little jazz. I was giving him a little bit of the business. Yes, that's another great Krug line there, Steve Schmelly. Say the wrong thing, Torg. Krug is great. Krug is great. Yeah, Daryl, Henry Winkler's still alive as far as I know. Kirok with another super chat. Thank you very much. And this is part 1 of 2. So actually, I'll wait until you post part 2, then I'll read them all at once. Sean O'Sullivan, favorite DS9 episode. For me, it's The Visitor. And as great as Deep Space Nine is, and as many Deep Space Nine episodes as there are that I really love, for me, it's The Visitor, and it's not even close. Like, there are great episodes of Deep Space Nine. There are many great episodes of Deep Space Nine. But for me, it's The Visitor by a mile. I mean, I think The Visitor is the best episode of any Star Trek show ever. And again, it's not close. Like, it's just so goddamn good. And then, let me go back a little bit. Isaiah ranked the TNG movies as well, and he says First Contact, Nemesis, Generations, and Insurrection. Well, we agree on First Contact. After First Contact, it's pretty much exactly flipped between the two of us. Like, yeah, for me, First Contact is the best, followed by Insurrection, followed by Generations, and followed by Nemesis. So leave First Contact in first place, and then just flip the rest of your choices completely backwards, and that will be my ranking. Dana, what was The Visitor about again? Oh my God. I I will explain it to you after I answer Kirak's super chat question. So, hey Steve, moving on. There is something I always wanted to ask you since you've been doing these batch reviews. How do you decide what episode belongs in what batch list? Take Miri for example. You did a parallel Earth, but Miri could also be in your orphan batch. How do you decide? I am just curious. Oh, it mostly depends on when I come up with the idea for the batch. Like I came up with the idea for the parallel Earths or the other Earths batch. Obviously, I came up with that before I knew I wanted to do an orphans batch, so Miri ended up there. Um, and I do come up with ideas for batches in batches. So, like I don't just come up with a single batch and then say, okay, I'm going to do these episodes and then move on. Like I'll come up with several ideas for themes that can be batches of retro reviews and then sort of assemble them at the same time. Um, but yeah, there are many episodes that could conceivably be categorized, by various, tropes that they have that recur in other episodes. So, Miri just got to be the, in the other Earths batch because of timing. And also, it's not something I overthink. Like the conceit of reviewing episodes in batches is just an excuse to review the episodes in something other than a chronological order. It allows me to move back and forth within different series and from show to show. Like, so I'm not just reviewing like, okay, here's the first episode of classic Trek, and next I'll review the first episode of animated series, and then after I get to, then it's time for the second episode of classic Trek and the second episode of the animated series and the second episode of TNG, and just go on like that forever. Like that sounds just deeply boring. And plus, there are so many episodes from those eras of the franchise that it would just take forever to get to some of my favorite episodes. So I decided to mix it up. And it makes sense if you're going to mix it up to still have some kind of organization. So the organizing principle is that the episodes are reviewed in batches, and the episodes in each batch are related to each other thematically in some way via a character or a trope or a premise or a setting or whatever. And that's the way I'm doing it. But I don't overthink it. I don't, if I'm sitting there and I'm thinking, well, gee, this could be an orphans episode, but I don't know. There's a transporter accident, and what if I want to do a batch of episodes about transporter accidents eventually? Maybe I should leave this one out. And if I get to that point, I'm thinking about it way too much. Geek, you are correct. Yes, it is not this coming Sunday. The Patron Hangout is not this coming Sunday, but the Sunday after that. Yes. Okay, Dana. The Visitor, the best Star Trek episode ever, which we did watch, is the one where Captain Sisko is apparently killed, but then it turns out he's trapped in limbo, basically, and he occasionally will come back and appear for short times to Jake, and the episode follows Jake through the rest of his life as he becomes a man and then grows old and makes repeated efforts to retrieve his father from his purgatory. And it's a beautiful human episode, and it makes me want to cry, and it's one of the greatest things I've ever seen on television, and it's my favorite episode of Star Trek, and you don't remember watching it. So that's fine. That's okay. I know that you don't mean anything by it, but it is. It's a really moving piece, and it's a beautiful. It's a work of art, basically. It's one of the most beautiful episodes of television of the decade of the 90s. Really, that's fine though. You don't remember it. You don't. It's like you never even watched it. It means nothing to you. That's fine. Oh, and yes, Sean O'Sullivan, that's true. Yes, the Melanie, the visitor, well, one of the visitors referred to in the title, because of course the title works on multiple levels. But yes, the visitor who visits old Jake, who prompts him to tell the story of the episode. Yes, that the actress was Andrew Robinson's daughter. Yes, absolutely. Oh, David Colby, you were getting a viola lesson, but your string broke. Ah, I'm sorry. Well, I hope you got it fixed. Yeah, Dana, the old Jake episode. Oh, you do remember it. Okay. But you don't remember much more than that. Okay. That's good. That's fine. That's fine. Again, just, it's just a beautiful piece. I mean, it's essentially a masterpiece, really. It's one of the most, but it's fine. It's fine. The old Jake episode, that's the one. The old Jake episode. Well, Kirok, of course, the best is debatable. I mean, it's a matter of opinion. I mean, it's not debatable for me. Like, to me, it's clearly The Visitor, but other people have different opinions because that's the way it works. David says, I like how you always find new ways to hurt Steve. Oh, I like it too. I think it's great. It's great. You should have. So here's the part that really hurts. Okay. Earlier this year, we read The Great Gatsby together, Dana and I. Dana was not impressed. To say the least, Dana was not impressed. So that was, I mean, I don't actually care. I don't hold it against her. Again, it's a matter of taste. You like what you like. You don't like what you don't like. It's fine. But it was a little deflating to be reading like what to me is some of the most beautifully written prose in all of the English language. Like, I love the way that The Great Gatsby is written. Yes, there are times when I feel Fitzgerald goes a little too far. There are times when it feels like he is trying too hard. He does overwrite. But for the most part, on average, that's just an exquisitely written book. And Dana is just like, whatever. No. So, which is funny because, like, I'm such a nice guy. I don't mention it, but there have been things that Dana has read to me out loud from books that she really likes that I think are just fucking garbage. But I didn't say it because I'm too polite. And you know what else? She doesn't like The Lighthouse. We watched The Lighthouse together. Not impressed by The Lighthouse at all. Like a knife in my heart. Like just a knife in my heart. David Colby, I didn't know that strings break fairly often because they have metal strings under intense tension and constantly vibrating. No kidding. How about that? Andrew Klang, I made a whole video about Gatsby movies that almost nobody watched, even though it's a really great video and I put a lot of work into it. I'm not bitter about it, though. My favorite Gatsby, I rewatched all of them, at least all of the ones that are currently available, in preparation for making my video. And I was actually surprised to find that the Robert Redford version from the 70s, from what, 73, 72? 73, 74 is when it came out. I think that was the best one, even though it, like all of them, has pretty serious problems. But I found the 74 version with Robert Redford and Mia Farrow and Sam Waterston, I thought was the best one. Before I did the rewatch, in my mind, in my memory, I thought, shockingly enough, if you know my general taste, that the Baz Luhrmann one was the best. Because my memory of it was that it starts out and the first 20 minutes or so are the typical Baz Luhrmann hyperactive bullshit. And then eventually he settles down and it actually becomes like a real movie made by a grown-up. But when I watched it this time to prepare for this Gatsby video, I don't know. I don't know if it's my memory or if I was in a different place in my life back then or what, but that never happened. It just never stopped being Baz Luhrmann-y. And I just thought, this is so much more awful than I remember. Like, this is just absolutely terrible from start to finish. And it's everything I hate about Baz Luhrmann movies. So I actually realized, oh, it's the shits. I thought by process of elimination, it was actually, relatively speaking, a good movie as far as Gatsby movies go. But it turns out, nope, it's the fucking shits. So the Redford version is my favorite. Ooh, David Colby, I like that. The reworked title for your YouTube project is Star Trek, because I'd run through Umberto Eco's 14 fascism signifiers for Strange New Worlds. You know what I like about it? Because you put the prefix on, and it makes you sound academic. It makes you sound really smart, right? And it's really cool that like you would choose such a hoity-toity, brainy sounding, pretentious title for a video essay about a Star Trek show that you think sucks. So I approve. David Colby, you mean purpler than Fitzgerald? Yeah, so have I, because his writing actually isn't all that purple most of the time. It's elegant and poetic and beautiful. I just don't understand how anyone can read or have read to them like the last page of The Great Gatsby and how just exquisitely written that is, and not think, damn, that's some good writing. But there sits Dana. That's what Dana thinks. So, which is fine. A lot of people think Lord of the Rings is well written, and I wouldn't wipe my ass with it. So opinions vary. Daryl Lett says, have you ever experienced the Mandela effect, thinking something happened which never did? In 1967, I would swear I heard on the radio 23 tornado deaths in Grand Rapids. I've never had it happen like that, like to that extent where like I remember something happening that just never happened. But I have had like more of the Berenstain Bears effect for certain things. I can't remember a specific example, but I have had the experience of like remembering something one way and then having a reminder of it, or seeing evidence of what it was really like, and it contradicts my memory, and like the Great Gatsby thing. Or a lot. Sometimes it happens with movie lines. Of course you like the last page a lot, Dana. I know why. Yeah, I've had minor versions of it, but I've never had like a major, example of the Mandela effect. Couple of super chats from Kirak. Thank you very much once again, my friend. Okay, after this, I'm done bugging you. You said this today, and again, this is subject to opinion. You said Caretaker is probably the best pilot. What about Emissary? Emissary is also a great pilot. I think Emissary is a great episode, and definitely a great pilot episode. It's between those two. Like for Star Trek pilots, it's either Caretaker or Emissary for me. I think, again, like ironic for Voyager, considering the show that Voyager eventually became, but I think Caretaker has a stronger plot, and does a better job of setting up its premise in a way that is intriguing and makes you like invested in what's going to happen next. Which again winds up being pointless because Voyager does almost nothing with its premise for 7 years. But that first episode makes you think, oh man, this is exciting. This has potential, right? And Emissary does too. But the thing about Emissary was more, for me, was more the character stuff. And how gutsy some of those choices were. Like I've talked myself to death for years about how much I love the fact that they establish in the first episode that Commander Sisko hates Captain Picard. And this show debuted at a time when Star Trek The Next Generation was everybody's favorite show and everybody loved Captain Picard. And your first spinoff of this really popular show is going to be built around a hero who hates the beloved character from the other show. Like I just, the guts that must have taken to say, yeah, not only are we going to do a spinoff show and try to make it different than the original show in ways that might be alienating to fans of that show, which it was to some, but we're going to go so far as to say that our hero hates the hero of the other show. Like, it's hard to imagine. Think of how timid studios are today, especially when we're dealing with like established franchises, like a legacy franchise like Star Wars or Star Trek or superheroes or whatever. Think of how absolutely scared to death studios, and in some cases, actual like writers and producers are, of offending or alienating any part of the fan base. I can't imagine something like that happening on a Star Trek. If the analogy would be, a lot of the closest thing to Captain Picard that current Star Trek has right now is Captain Pike, right? Imagine if the next new Star Trek show was a direct spin-off of Strange New Worlds, and the hero of that Star Trek show established in the first episode of that show that they absolutely despised Captain Pike and thought he was a terrible person. Like, can you imagine that happening? That would never happen. That would never happen. No writer would have the guts to try that, and the studio would never allow them to do that. They would say, "Oh no, that'll alienate the fans. The fans won't like that." Like, they're so scared of the fans. They would never do that. I'm so glad that the shows in the 90s, the 80s and the 90s, as flawed as they were, I'm so glad that they were not made under that environment where the creators were forced to be petrified of the fan base. They actually had compared to now, they had a relatively great amount of freedom to just make the show they wanted to make. Yeah. Oh, Pondering Politics, thank you very much, my friend. Another super chat. I appreciate it. Great vids about the election and attack, bro. Thank you very much, my friend. I'm glad you liked them. Actually, Pondering Politics sent me a message on Twitter, I think, the day before I posted my "Someone Took a Shot at Trump, So Now What" video and said, "Oh, I hope you're making a video about this." And I said, "I've got an idea." So hopefully it turned out okay. I think it was a pretty good video. David Colby says, "Here's my wild hot take. I think the closest thing to Captain Picard right now is Dal from Prodigy. He's just wildly different from every other Star Trek character in Captain." Well, in that sense, I agree. But I mean, just in terms of like how embraced the character is by the fans. I think Captain Pike is the closest to a Captain Picard-like character that we have now in the current production era. But yeah, I mean, in terms of like how different they are from their predecessors, yeah, I would agree with you there for sure. Black Cover 95, exactly. If it were made nowadays, Sisko would be in awe of Picard. Yeah, think how exactly. It's the lower decksification. Although it was a problem before Lower Decks. Lower Decks did not create it. Lower Decks just trades on it and exacerbates it and normalizes it. Everybody loves everybody. Everybody thinks everybody is awesome. Everybody knows everything about everybody, but like, not like they're people who live in the world, but like they're people who watch the shows and they're just fans like us, and they love everybody and everybody's awesome. Yeah, it's fucking tedious, and I can't imagine anything more boring than that kind of show. Oh, everybody just loves everybody and everybody's awesome, and everybody knows everything about everybody. Okay, whatever. And also, there aren't any jokes, even though it's supposedly a comedy. Anyway, who is recommending? Oh, David, are you recommending The Witch to Dana? Yeah, The Witch is great. The Witch is fantastic. I like The Witch a lot. It's not as good as The Lighthouse, but it's really good. Same director. It's really, The Witch is fantastic. The Witch is better than The Northman. If we're talking about that director's filmography, we're talking about the oeuvre of Robert Eggers. The Northman, I like. The Northman is okay, but it goes on for a while, and it's got some great, like really well filmed action scenes. But God, the story is just so full of itself and so full of shit and just takes so goddamn long. And I don't care about any of these fucking people. Great, well staged, well shot action. But inferior for me to The Witch and vastly inferior to the brilliant film The Lighthouse that all people of taste enjoy and celebrate as a great work of art. Dana, I don't know if you would like The Witch or not. I think you probably would. But I've been wrong before. I don't know. I think you probably would like it though. Yeah, but Alex, in order to undercut Boimler not knowing Nick Locarno, they had to have Nick Locarno on the show, which in and of itself is a dumb Easter egg. That's what the show, instead of writing clever jokes or coming up with clever plots based around their characters and in ways that not only make us laugh because it's a comedy, but also like, you know, develop their characters and show us who they are and make them feel like real people. Like let's just throw some dumb Easter eggs on the screen. As soon as I'm just going to rant about Lower Decks for just a second, because I hardly ever do. I keep it all bottled up inside. I follow the example. I don't want to be like Tom Servo going off on Canada in his Dudley Do-Right costume on that one episode. I want to follow Mike's advice and say, we must disguise our hate. We must disguise our hate. As soon as that fucking ship showed up in the last season of Lower Decks, the ship that would like attack the other ships, and at first it looked like it was blowing them up, and then it turned out it was just capturing them or whatever. As soon as that ship started being like the thing that would happen at the end of the episodes to kind of be the thread that was carried along through the season, as soon as I saw that ship, I said to myself, I wonder what fucking dumb Easter egg this is going to turn out to be. Because I knew it was going to be something. It couldn't be something original. It would be some fucking bullshit Easter egg pull from some episode, some obscure reference to something from TNG, and what do you know? Nick Locarno. How about that? Holy shit. Oh, God. Fucking tedious. Eli Ballin. Yes, I'm looking forward to Eggers' Nosferatu as well. Very much so. Have you seen the trailer with Defoe as Bill Skarsgård as the vampire? We don't really get to see him, but Willem Dafoe as the vampire hunter, as the Van Helsing character. Goddamn! Just let me have it right now. Black Cover 95. What do I think of My Adventures with Superman? I love My Adventures with Superman. I was actually telling Dana about it a couple days ago. No, actually, Black Cover 95, I've liked a couple of Lower Decks episodes, but yeah, Wedge Dudge was definitely not one. I find that to be, by the general fan base, I find that to be by far one of the most overrated Star Trek episodes ever made. There are so many fans that love that episode. I do not think there's anything remotely special about that episode at all. I do not see what the big deal is. I think people are overreacting to a mildly clever premise that goes nowhere. Like it's a one-note joke for the entire episode. Like, oh, let's see what's going on this ship and yeah. Anyway, I was trying to say something positive about a show I like, My Adventures with Superman. So I don't want to give anything away. I'm not going to spoil any like major plot stuff. Well, I'll spoil a little tiny plot thing, but it won't ruin the show for anybody, hopefully. But so I was telling Dana about it because Dana has not been watching it. But Dana, I think you will really like My Adventures. I'm more sure that you would like My Adventures with Superman than I am that you would like The Witch. I'm almost positive you would really like My Adventures with Superman. But anyway, so in the most recent My Adventures with Superman, there's a plot where Brainiac has taken control of Superman's body. And his plan is he's going to use Superman's body to take over the world or whatever, right? The details don't really matter for what I'm saying. And so Lois uses Kryptonian technology to enter Superman's consciousness in order to wake him up so he can drive Brainiac out of his mind, right? And shocker of shockers, massive spoiler, she succeeds and Superman wakes up back in his body and Brainiac is driven from Superman's mind and Brainiac wakes up in his robot body again, right? In his own robot body back on Brainiac's spaceship. So he's in Superman's body. He's rampaging through Metropolis. Like he's carrying out his plan to take over the world. And then the next thing he knows, he loses consciousness and he wakes up and he's back in his robot body. And the first thing he does is look around and look down at himself and go, ah! And it's the funniest shit. It's so well done. Yes. I love my adventures with Superman. I know, Andrew, right? He's because he was Count Orlok in Shadow of the Vampire, right? And now he's the vampire hunter. It's full circle. It's full circle for Mr. Defoe, the brilliant actor and star of such legendary films as The Lighthouse. And also recently Poor Things, which, I mean, Poor Things was fantastic too. And Defoe was great in that. And The Florida Project. If we're talking about relatively recent home runs for Willem Dafoe, there are quite a few. Florida Project. Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful film. Black Cover Now. I mean, yeah, that's funny. Like I hate Wedge Dudge because it's a Lower Decks episode of Lower Decks. It's not funny. It's not funny and it's not clever and it's not creative and I just don't think it's very good. Like, it's a somewhat clever gimmick that doesn't go anywhere funny or entertaining. Oh, hey, Smiley. SMLYTP. Thank you very much for leaving comments on my public domain video. I really appreciate that. Just started binging your stuff after finding your public domain 2024 video. Keep it up. I appreciate it. Thank you very much. Knit and crochet. Come on, I like all kinds of Star. I know you're being sarcastic. I like way more Star Trek than I actively dislike. You know, I mean, even among the new stuff. I mean, you want to talk, if you want like the bitter, angry old man Star Trek fan, that's Jason. Like, that's not me. I mean, I have critical things to say about all of them, but Lower Decks is really, well, Picard, obviously, but Picard was a shit show. But other than Picard, which is a shit show, except for like a handful of episodes, Lower Decks is the only one that I just really don't enjoy from top to bottom. And even Lower Decks, I was kind of into it in the first season. I thought the first season had some promise. And then the second season came along and it became clear that they either weren't interested or weren't able to actually do a show, you know, and they're just going to do this fan service shit continuously until they get canceled, which is what happened. Oh, Isaiah, you're watching the original Twister tonight, and then you're going to see Twisters next week. Cool. Yeah. The new one's gotten some decent reviews. And Glenn Powell's in it. And Glenn Powell is the guy that I'm like, why isn't he a huge movie star? And I feel like he's going to be. I feel like he's right on the precipice of breaking through. And boy, when he does, watch out. That dude is going to be a huge fucking movie star. John Burns, thoughts about Quentin Tarantino's Star Trek movie? I mean, I'm kind of sorry that it's not going to happen because I was very curious about it. The only thing was, I mean, it still would have been interesting to see, but he was never going to write it. I think he had the idea. Maybe he would have gotten the story credit. Like apparently the concept was his, but it was going to be, the screenplay would have actually been written by other writers and then he would have directed it. And Tarantino is a great director, and I'm sure even if he had nothing to do with the script, even if he was just a work for hire director and he had no role in developing the story at all until he was hired as director, like I'm sure it would still be really interesting and fun to watch because he's a really great director, but he's also a great writer. And it would have been cool to see a Star Trek movie written and directed by Quentin Tarantino, but we're not going to get anything. It's never going to happen, or at least it's not going to happen anytime soon. But it's kind of a shame because I think it would have been interesting. Whether it would have been good or not, I don't know, but it would have been interesting. Oh, John Burns, you're seeing Deadpool and Wolverine next week. Good. I'm going to see it in the theater too, probably. I think I've decided I'm going to see it in the theater. But yeah, I'm looking forward to it. Steve Schmeling says, interesting you did a Neelix Trek actually when I just finished watching Benson last night. Yeah. I guess next I should do an Odo one, right? I know I've done an Odo one already. I should do another Odo one and keep the Benson connections rolling. Yes, Gedrin, I saw Defoe in the new, I watched the new trailer for the new Beetlejuice. And I saw Defoe was in it. And I was like, oh, hey, I'm probably not going to see that one in the theater. I'm not like super excited about the Beetlejuice sequel. I'll see it when it comes out on streaming sometime. But I was like, oh, hey, Willem Dafoe's in it. And that always makes me happy. Mino Other says, what do you think about the Deadpool and Wolverine movie? Well, I mean, I haven't seen it yet, so I don't know what to think about it, but I'm going to see it. Like, I'm looking forward to seeing it. I hope it's funny. It looks funny from the trailer. So I'm looking forward to it. Hey, Stephen G. Clenard is here. I was talking about you earlier, my friend. And I said I could tell that you were bummed after your humiliating confession in your patron question when you admitted that you made up all those rumors about Velvet Goldmine and Star Trek Legacy. And I said, listen, man, if you ever need to chase the blues away, you can come here to Maryland and you can hang out with me and we'll drink Natty Boh beer and we'll listen to all the Phil Collins that I can find, which, thanks to music streaming services, is all of it. We can listen to the entire Phil Collins solo catalog. We can listen to all of the Phil Collins Genesis stuff. It'll just be Phil Collins and Natty Boh nonstop. And on that note, as I notice that it's past the hour, and also Dana said, okay, we've hit the hour and I'm turning into a pumpkin. Good night. We have been going for 2 hours. So I'm going to wrap this up. Oh, 255 AD says, going back to my question, I think if you replace him, there can't be a contest. It has to be a very clean transition. Yes, I agree. I agree with you. I don't think there should be any kind of like quickie primary. I think if Biden drops out, it should be, okay, then we're going with Harris. I don't think that's happening. And Biden and his people have repeatedly said that's not happening. So I think we need to stop saying, yeah, but is that going to happen? We need to just stop and say, no, Biden's the guy. We're going with Biden. We're electing Biden in November. That's it. End of discussion. But if it's not Biden, I think it almost has to be Harris. And there should not be some kind of quasi nomination process. It should go directly to Kamala Harris. Anyway, so I'm going to wrap things up. If you have any final questions, please throw them in the chat in the next couple of minutes as I go through my closing wrap up here, and I'll get to some final questions. But in the meantime, thank you all so much for joining me, as always. If you enjoy my YouTube work and you want to support me in continuing to do it, you can do so by becoming a patron at patreon.com/Steve Shives, or becoming a channel member by clicking the join button on the YouTube page right below the video. Either way, whether you become a patron or a channel member at any level, one of the perks you unlock is you get the opportunity to submit questions ahead of time for these twice monthly Ask Away live streams. You get a link sent, you get a notification about where to go to submit the questions on the Monday before these Friday Ask Away live streams, and patrons and members at all levels get that. So if that sounds interesting to you, or if you just want to help me continue to make these videos, please consider becoming a patron or a channel member. I could not do this without my wonderful, generous patrons and channel members. Also, don't forget, if you enjoy the stuff I do here on YouTube, you might enjoy the podcasts that I am a part of. The Let Me Listen family of podcasts, Late Seating, the movie review podcast that I'm on alongside the great Jason Harding, and of course, the Ensign's Log, the Star Trek themed comedy podcast that I am on alongside Jason, and also the wonderful Dana Cole, who was with us in the live chat, and who is also my companion on Trek Reluctantly every Wednesday. And speaking of the podcasts, some of you may have seen a video I put up yesterday, an unscheduled video, but Jason is currently running an annual fundraiser for the Let Me Listen podcast, and the link, it's a GoFundMe. The link to it is in the description of this live stream. And it is a fundraiser primarily to fund the podcast, because Jason does all the work for the podcast, and he does incur expenses while doing it. And the only way that he gets compensated for that, because we don't have advertising or anything on our podcasts, and we're not paid to do it. We don't work for anybody, so we do the podcasts ourselves, and they are a labor of love, especially for Jason, because he does most of the work. And the only way that he gets compensated for that is through crowdfunding. And there is a Let Me Listen podcast's Patreon, but we are also doing a crowdfunding campaign through GoFundMe for the podcasts. And also, in addition to that, Jason has some emergency expenses coming up in the near future. He and his family are going to have to move to a new city and a new home soon. So they're going to need help paying for that. And also, Jason is living with heart failure, and he's fine. He doesn't have a health crisis at the moment. He's treating it and living right and doing fine, but he still has a lot of medical bills to pay. So the GoFundMe will help pay off some of those as well. So the link is in the description. It's a fundraiser for the podcasts, and to keep those going, and to help Jason cover his moving expenses, and to help him pay his outstanding medical bills. So if you enjoy the podcasts we make, if you enjoy having Jason around, which I personally do, and you have a few bucks to spare, please consider donating some to the Late Seating, the Let Me Listen podcast / moving expenses for Jason GoFundMe that is linked in the description. And in addition to that, also don't forget charitylinks.page. Which contains a lot of the links that were shared earlier in the chat. These are crowdfunding links for a lot of people who are friends of ours who find themselves in financial distress and could use a helping hand. So after everything else I've asked you for money for tonight, if you have a few bucks left over and you would like to help out someone in need, charitylinks.page, which is created and maintained by our pal, Some Random Geek, is there for your use, and we would encourage you to do that. So now then, let me take one last look at the live chat and see what folks have to say. Nishikin Toki, got to focus on the candidate we have now. Exactly. Isaiah Taylor just says Land of Confusion. Yep. Great Genesis song. Oh, great Genesis song. Kara says, it's been real as they say. Catch you next time. Thank you very much for being here, and I hope I will see you next time. David Colby says, what if I don't want you to keep making videos, but I want you to keep, but I do, but I do want to keep making you dance for my amusement with my inane questions every other week. Then I'm going to have to keep making the videos. And you're going to have to keep giving me money. Unless you want to take the chance of not submitting a question ahead of time because you're a financial supporter, and you can just put questions in the chat and hope that I see them and answer them. But you're taking your life in your hands. It's no guarantee. Stephen G. Clenard, are you sick on top of everything else? Aw, I'm sorry, man. I'm really sorry that you're feeling ill as well as all the other problems. I'm sure it's not related. 55 AD says, is the real reason those who walk is visually unadaptable is Gwen says you have to imagine the setting. Have you ever, like, doesn't that mean you can't put it on a TV or movie screen? I think the real reason why those who walk is difficult to adapt is because there isn't really a story. I don't think there's anything visually about it that's unadaptable. I'm sure you could come up with something. The problem, what makes it difficult to do a direct adaptation is because there's not really a plot. What are you going to put, like, what's it about? What are you going to dramatize? There's nothing to dramatize unless you make stuff up, unless you add stuff to it, which you could definitely do. But then there's always going to be the people that are going to be like, well, it's not a direct adaptation, you know, and then you dunk their heads in a toilet and then you go back to writing your movie. And then maybe it's good. That's the way that should work. John Stewart says, do you think they'll ever get things together and do another Kelvin timeline movie? I hope so. I don't have an idea for what it would be, but I hope so. I would like to see at least one more because I do like that crew. I like those actors. John Burge, yes, I see this, man. You keep posting this, all right? I'll find. Yeah, my question wanted to highlight the differences between Roosevelt and Trump. Roosevelt was a war hero. I agree with you. I agree with you. Okay. All right. That's it, everybody. I am out of here. Thank you all so much for watching, for hanging out with me, for your questions, for your support. Those of you who are patrons or members, and also those of you who were very generous tonight with super chats. Thank you very much. I will see you next week. Have a good night. Have a good weekend. And take care, everybody.